I'm very glad that I was able to get another opportunity to come back here and present you guys some more knowledges about economics and financing and whatnot. Um, I really hope that all my contribution really helps you guys to build a online class so that there will be more opportunities for a lot more able teachers to really have an opportunity to speak to you guys and teach some of the things that we actually teach in America. So what I'm going to cover today is let me actually share that with you guys over here. Um, Give me a second. Now, if I do this, does that show yeah, I know. Does that show the whole screen, I believe? Okay, that's great. All right. So, today we're going to cover export, import, and why we trade. I'm going to actually have a chat open. So if you have any questions at any point, feel free to ask me. And I might ask you some questions here and there. And if you could just simply respond like yes or no, that will be just fine too. Before we start, I want to just quickly test our knowledge about export and import. Now, you guys can just respond on the chat. Between import and export, what do you think is good for the country as a whole? Between import and export, so how about we write export as E and import as I. Like you can just respond to the chat in call messages. Like you can just write, if you think export is better, you can write E. If you think import is better, you can just write I and just show me on the chat. Yup. Okay. E. So my question is, what is better for the whole country? Like export or import? A lot of E's. Okay. All right. All right. E. Yup. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, including myself, when I first, before learning all these things, I used to also think export is what's good for our country as a whole. Yes, E plus I, yes, sure, Zhang. Um, but yeah, I used to think that way too. But my mission today is to convince you that actually import is just as good for the country as much as export does. So let me start my lesson right now. At any point, I'll move back and forth. So I might not be able to see the chat right away because it has to be presented on the other screen. So Miss Lee, at any time, if there's a question, if you could like quickly like speak up through the mic, I will immediately switch to the chat. Okay. So let's get started with export versus import and why we trade. Now, to cover this, we'll cover four basic things. The first one is demand and supply. The next one is consumer and producer surplus. And then we'll talk about who exports and who imports. And lastly, we'll discuss what's better. Okay. Now, the reason why we cover demand and supply is because we have to talk, in order to decide who's going to export, who's going to import, we really got to talk about consumer and producer surplus. But without really covering the basics of demand and supply, the graph that I'm about to show you won't make sense. So it's going to be a very fast crash course. So crash course is kind of like lightning lesson, so it's going to be very, very quickly. So if you guys could follow and any questions, just ask me. Okay. So as our first part, now you as a demand and supply, I'm sure you guys know in Chinese too. 수요 in Korean is 수요 and 공급. So it might be something similar along that line. So 수요 is demand, which is and the law there's a law of demand, which is which is a fundamental principle of economics that states that at a higher price, consumer will demand a lower quantity of a good. Quantity is 수량, so like the number. So let's take, and if I were to translate this idea of law of demand to a graph over here, you see on the y-axis, you can see the price, right? And on x-axis, you can see the quantity, the 수량, once again, right? So as you can see, when the price is high, the quantity demanded is gonna be low. But when price goes down, the quantity demanded goes up. It's just like for anything. Like you want to buy an iPhone, and if iPhone is like $5,000, which is crazy amount, then very few people will want to buy it. But if iPhone suddenly goes down to like $100, everybody will want to buy that. So that's the basic idea of law of demand. Now, the next concept is law of supply. So in law of supply, as price goes up, then quantity supplied goes up. As price falls, the quantity supplied falls. Now, what do I mean by this? Let's say you're a producer. Let's say you are owning a factory, and you can produce you own a factory that produces computer. Okay. Now, let's say because of some reason, right now the price of a computer in the market is like only $10. Okay. Then I wouldn't want to produce that. And so will be many other producers of the computer. So the quantity supplied to the market will be very, very little. But when price goes up and up and up, this will motivate the factory owners to produce. They will be like, oh my gosh, now the price is this high. If I were to actually make it and sell it to the market, oh, I'm going to make money. So a lot more producers will actually supply the computer to the market. So putting these together, we actually see this intersection between the demand and supply, in which the interest of consumers and interest of suppliers, the sellers, will meet together at one point. And this one point, my friends, is called equilibrium. So it is the state in which the supply and demand for a certain product, or we call it good or service, are in balance. So that's where the interest of the consumer and suppliers meet together, and that's where we actually have a certain price for the market. So in theory, and also in reality too, a lot of products that we buy today, like even like from Shanghai to like what is it? 电脑 and 手机 and everything, all these prices, right, of these products are all usually they don't change as much, right? That's because that price that we see in the market is actually what we call equilibrium price. So the price will not change unless something huge happens, like inflation or whatnot, but that we'll cover later. Actually, in fact, inflation we'll cover the next week. Now, so price over here, we call it P star. That's going to be the main price. And Q star is how much producers are supplying and how much consumers are buying. Okay. Okay, perfect. Any questions so far? I think it's pretty straightforward, right? Now, so moving back here again. So now that we covered demand and supply, we're going to move on to consumer and producer surplus. The reason I talk about demand and supply is because we have to know how the graph works in order to calculate and understand the surplus. Now, consumer surplus is basically consumers gain from exchange. What I mean by exchange, simply put, is consumers gain from purchase. Okay. So this is the difference between the maximum price a consumer is willing to pay for a given quantity and the market price. Okay. Miss Lee, I have a quick question to you. Miss Lee?
Okay.
Do you like 汉堡?
You mean hamburgers?
Yeah, hamburgers.
Sure, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Isn't hamburger right now like maybe Big Mac? Isn't that about like 80, like 75 Taiwanese dollar? How much is it?
I'm not that sure, but roughly the same price as you mentioned.
Okay. Well, let's say Big Mac right now is $70. How much, if you're really hungry, how much are you willing to pay like for the hamburger? Maximum price you're willing to pay.
$180.
Okay, 100. Now, so you are willing to pay for up to 100 Taiwanese dollar, but then if the price of the hamburger is 70, how much money are you saving then? There'll be 100 minus 70. So you are, in a way, in your heart, you're saving 30 Taiwanese dollar, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so that is what we call consumer surplus. So that's the difference. So maximum price, right? Going back to the slides over here. So maximum price that Miss Lee is willing to pay for a hanbao is 100, but the market price of hanbao is 70 Taiwanese dollar. So that $30 that's left is going to be Miss Lee's consumer surplus. So sorry for calling you out here. I just wanted to give an example. And in a way, there's this thing called total consumer surplus. Now, this is sum of consumer surplus of all buyers across the country. So for Miss Lee, she's willing to pay 100 Taiwanese dollar for hanbao, right? But for me, I'm willing to pay 150 Taiwanese dollar for a Big Mac. For some person, that person is willing to only pay up to like 80 Taiwanese dollar. So whatever it is, the gain that each person is making, all added together, is what we call total consumer surplus. Now, this will make a lot more sense if I were to show you on a graph, okay? So graphically, the total consumer surplus can be measured by the area below the demand curve and right above the price. Now, this will make a lot more sense if we look at over here. So let's say we're talking about the market of oil, so oil barrel. So we have over here the demand curve for the barrel of oil, okay? And the current market price of barrel of oil is $20. And at the level of $20, the quantity demanded would be 90 barrels of oil. In this case, what you will see is that very few people, though, in the whole market of the country, very few people, but still there, are willing to pay even up to $80 for the oil. So then for the people that's willing to pay up to $80, if price of oil right now is $20, their consumer surplus is going to be 80 minus 20, so $60. So and by the law of demand, more and more people will be willing to pay for less than 80. So what do I mean by this? So going back here, I wish I could actually draw on here, but can you guys see the mouse, my mouse pointer by any chance? Can you guys see the mouse? Okay. So what I mean by this is, let's say there's somebody, right? I don't know. Let's come up with the random name, Alex. Alex is willing to pay up to $80. And if Alex pays ends up paying only $20, then if I were to draw a line with this mouse pointer, there that much, right? This length of 60, right? 80 minus 20. This line is going to be Alex's consumer surplus, right? Then we have Jenny. Jenny is willing to pay, I don't know, up to like maybe $60. But if she buys it for $20, then this line, there will be this line, $40 of consumer surplus, right, for Jenny. So total surplus, in a way, is if we were to color every consumer surplus up to where price is $20, then it's gonna actually look more like this. You know what I'm saying? Because if we were to add all the lines together, then that's gonna actually meet where $20 is, like where we're gonna have a consumer surplus up to somebody who's willing to pay up to $21, and at exactly $20, that consumer surplus is going to be 20 minus 20, so 0. So if we add all the consumer surplus, that is our what we call total consumer surplus. Then how do we find this total consumer surplus? Easy. So if we were to color everyone's surplus up to this, it will look more like this. And so the consumer surplus is the area enclosed between the demand curve and the price line. Okay, so this area, which will form a triangle, is going to be the consumer surplus. Okay. Then how do we calculate this? How do we calculate a total consumer surplus? It's easy. You guys all know area of triangle, right? Base times height divided by 2. So in this case, if we were to do it, we have base, which is up to 90, right? So 90 times, now the height of the triangle is not 80 because it starts from where 20 is. So it's going to be 90 times 60, so which is going to be 5,400, so 5,400, divided by 2, that's going to be, I believe, 2,700, isn't it? Yeah, I think so. But you guys know the point of this, right? So that's the consumer surplus and how we calculate the entire consumer surplus. Questions so far? All good? Yeah? Very nice, very nice. 很好，很好。Okay, 走吧。All right. Now moving on to the next part, which is producer surplus. It's going to be the same thing, but on a producer side. So producer surplus is the producer's gain from selling. So this is going to be the difference between the market price and the minimum price at which producer would be willing to sell. The market price minus producer's minimum willing price that producer is willing to sell. So total you know what? I'll just show you with the graph. I think it'll make a lot more sense here. So producer surplus, in this case, let's say is price is $40. Okay, the barrel of oil right now, the price is $40. So a very few producers in the country, but still there, are willing to sell really as low as almost $0 for a barrel. Now, this may sound impossible, but it is. Because think about it. You know, how about oils that are not being sold? So you are an oil producer, and you know you have some oils that will actually expire tomorrow, right? So if this oil, you know, this oil is going to expire tomorrow, so you have to sell today, but nobody is buying it, then what you're gonna do? You're gonna sell it for a very low price, right? Maybe you'll do 1+1 promotion, right? So if you buy a barrel of fresh oil, then we'll give you this barrel of oil for free. Or you can sell it like, I'll give you one, I'll sell it for 1 cent. It's still better than throwing it away, you know what I mean? So some people will be selling it as low as for free. So for that person, if that person ends up selling that barrel of oil for $40, then that producer's surplus is going to be 40 minus 0. So it equals to 40, right? So by the law of supply, more and more of these producers would be willing to sell as the price gets close and close and close to $40. So if we are to color everyone's surplus up to where price is 40, it will look more like the triangle. So the producer surplus is this time area enclosed between the price line and the supply curve. So this triangle over here is going to be the producer surplus. Now, then how do we calculate? Exactly the same thing. Base times height divided by 2. So in this case, we don't have to worry about like the gap is going to be from 0 to 40. So that's the height of triangle. So 40 times 60, that would be 2,400. And 2,400 divided by 2, so it's going to be 1,200. So putting all these together is what we call total surplus. Total surplus, simply put, is consumer surplus plus producer surplus. Graphically speaking, this total surplus can be measured by either consumer surplus plus producer surplus, adding them together, or a huge triangle area between demand and supply curves up to the equilibrium. What do I mean by this? So let's say we have this demand and supply curve. So we know already producer surplus is the area between the price line and the supply curve. So this consumer surplus on the other end is the area of triangle between the demand curve and the price line. So you can either add consumer surplus and producer surplus, or you can actually just find the whole area of this big triangle. You know what I mean? So this, so it can be 80 times 60, 4,800 divided by 2, so 2,400. So you can find it that way. Now, why am I covering all this, right? That's because when it comes to really determining why import and exports both benefit, we gotta know the consumer and producer surplus. So now that we cover consumer and producer surplus, does anybody have any questions so far? No? All right, moving on. Sorry, that all right is one thing that a lot of my students do in my classroom, so I kind of learn from them. Anyway. Now, to talk about deciding who's going to be the exporters and who's going to be the importer, we really got to talk about this part. A price is a signal wrapped in an incentive. Okay. Chile or something. Chile. I forgot, but I just Googled it and that's what it showed me. But price is a signal wrapped in an incentive. What do I mean by this? So if the market price of some good, by the way, means not good, but it means a product. Okay. So if the market price of a good is higher than the cost of making something, that would send a signal to a firm to produce that good. So in other words, if market price is like $50 and for a company's production cost is only $10, then that signals that company an opportunity to make some money, right? So as a whole country level, if domestic price, meaning price within a country, is less than the world price, so how world price meaning like what the goods sells for around the world, that sends a signal to that country to export the good. Okay, so what's that mean? Let's say in I know because of TSMC, Taiwan is really, really good at making microchips. Okay, I know in America, they don't have as good of a technology to make microchips as good as TSMC does. So for America, no, for Taiwan, they know that cost of making a microchip, let's say, is just like $1. Okay, but for America, cost of making microchips is $4. Then for Taiwan, they're like, oh my gosh, like our product, if we actually export it, send that product to America, then we can actually make a lot of money with that, because we can just, even if we charge it for like $1, now that's gonna attract a lot of customers in America to buy our product, not American. Why? Because our product is just $1, while American microchip is $4. So why would they even buy American microchip if our microchip, which is only $1, can perform just as good, right? So that's why TSMC and all these companies, right? TSMC is exporting microchips to America. Now, on the other hand, on the flip side, right, if the world price is lower than the domestic price, then that would send a signal to import the good. So for America would be like, oh my gosh, for us, like we're charging $4 for a microchip, but Taiwan, the same quality of the microchip is only $1. So maybe it might be better to just import it. And instead of spending all this money of making microchips, we can maybe make something else that's better, that we are better at making. You know what I mean? So they're gonna, so for America, they're gonna import it. So putting this together, how do we determine? So if price of the world is higher than price of domestic good, then you would export. But if domestic price is higher than the world price, then you would import it. Now, let's go back to now I'm going to weave this idea with consumer surplus, domestic producer surplus, and everything all together. Okay. So quick review. I know we've just covered this, right? But if we have this area from domestic trade only, so like we're talking about just Taiwanese market, and Taiwan is not trading with anyone or something like that, okay? So if it within Taiwanese market for Taiwan, we know that consumer surplus is going to be just this domestic price area between demand curve and the domestic price. So it's going to be A. Producer surplus is going to be just this B area B, and total is going to be AB, right? Now, let's talk about a case where world price is cheaper than domestic price. What would be a really good example of this? How about this hot dog? You know, I think Americans are eating way more hot dogs than Taiwanese, and for so I think technology and everything in America is better to make hot dogs for a cheaper price, I think. So let's say for the market for hot dog, okay? Yeah, market for hot dog, yeah, sure. So without the trade, if Taiwan doesn't trade, so in this case, since the price of world is much cheaper for than Taiwanese price to make hot dog, so what's going to happen here is Taiwan will import hot dogs from America, from England, all these places that are in where hot dog price is cheaper. Okay, so if they don't trade, the consumer surplus in Taiwan not trading, then it's going to be price of domestic, so it's going to be A, and producer surplus is going to be B and C without trade, right? So total surplus would be A, B, and C. But now, if Taiwan decides to Now, because price of the world is much cheaper, much lower, right? Much lower. If Taiwan begins to import hot dog, what's going to happen? Now, consumer surplus is, remember, the area between domestic price, consumer surplus is the area between demand curve and the price line. Now, because now Taiwan is importing hot dog from the world, the price of hot dog would be much lower, right? What does that mean? Instead of having just A as the consumer surplus, we have suddenly area between the demand curve and the new price line. So this one and that one. So it's going to be A, B, and D. A new area that we never seen before, right? Even up to here suddenly becomes a consumer surplus, part of consumer surplus. Now, but this, if we are to import now, of course, that's going to be bad for domestic hot dog producers, right? Because they used to sell it over here, but then now that Taiwan is importing hot dogs, they won't be able to sell as much. But they will still sell, but they will have to compromise themselves with the world price. So yes, the domestic producer surplus is gonna go down to C, only C. Now, before trading, it used to be B and C, but with the trade, it's gonna go down to C. However, as a whole country, what is the total surplus? It's going to be A, B, C, D, right? So this area of D, which now goes to consumer surplus, is a new area that's added to the whole Taiwanese economy, to the whole Taiwanese hot dog market, right? So even for the import, when we went back to the first question, right? We talk about, I asked you guys, what is good for the whole country, right? And a lot of you said, oh, it's only good, export is good. But no, even for the import, it really does impact because it benefits consumers. Yes, as a whole country, it really does help. Even the import really does help. Now, let's go to the case of exports then. Now, again, without the trade at the domestic price, consumer surplus is going to be just A and B, and producer surplus will be just C. But with the trade now, what's going to happen is, because we're exporting, right? Because we're exporting for to the world. So let's talk about the TSMC microchips once again. So TSMC microchip, without trading, used to be just $1. But TSMC noticed that the price of the world is now $3 or $4. Then TSMC will actually jack up their price up to $4 so that they can sell almost equally across the world. So that includes, yes, the price of TSMC microchips will go up to the world price, which is $4. So what's going to happen in the Taiwanese market? So for Taiwanese, who used to for the consumers of that microchips, will be the ones to lose the benefit. So while consumer surplus used to be A and B combined, now that with the price of the world and TSMC is exporting their microchips, price will go up. So domestic consumers will lose some surplus over here. So consumer surplus, when it comes to trading, is going to stay A. Okay. But look at the producer surplus though. Producer surplus is area between the new price line and the supply curve. So in this case, it's going to be B, C, and D, right? B, C, D. So putting those things together, what's going to happen is, yes, the total surplus, even when we export it, right, is going to be, it's going to secure this area D over here so that it's benefiting the whole country. Okay, so quick summary over here is going to be, yes, countries benefit from trade regardless of being an importer or exporter. Total surplus goes up regardless if the country is an importer or exporter. Countries usually develop a comparative advantage because of natural resources, geographic location, or cheaper labor. And because with all this price and the comparative advantage, which I haven't actually covered, but this will lead to specialization. What do I mean by this? Back to the TSMC example. For America, America will realize that, oh, like TSMC is making microchips so much better than us. So it is better for us to really not make our own microchips, but use TSMC's microchip. And instead of all the money that we put in, instead of putting all the money that we put into making our own microchips, we're gonna just make more hot dogs. So in a way, America will be specializing into making hot dogs, and TSMC will specialize in making, instead of making hot dogs, they will make the microchips. Now, I'm sure some of you seen the news that President Biden from America has passed a law, right? That they're not going to really purchase microchips from Taiwan, and they're gonna have this like a mass production development to make microchips on their own. Now, in an economic standpoint, that is being stupid. I'm not trying to be politically siding with a certain party, but to be honest though, why would you? It's a waste of money, basically, right? It's a waste of money to really develop this area, which is already developed in another country. So for America, it might be better to not develop microchips, but develop another ways that they can specialize themselves. Now, then why do President Biden and other politicians try to do these things? Like if you're soon there will be a presidential election where Trump will become is more very likely within America. People are saying that Trump might be a president, but even for Trump, he's saying like, oh, like make America great again and make jobs. Like all these foreign companies will have to make factories here and blah blah blah. That is also very being stupid, because you could just trade it and save a lot of money and use that money to fund other projects that already America is leading. But why do politicians do this? So that they can win the votes. Okay, this is where theory meets the reality. So politicians, I think both in Taiwan, America, and even in Korea, politicians will try their best to win the votes. And the thing is though, they already know these economic theories. However, to win the votes, they're going to do anything because it sounds appealing to American public that bringing all this factories into America sounds appealing to them. That's why politicians are selling that as a slogan to win the votes. But as economists, the reason why we need to learn economics is because if we study just even a little bit of it, you'll see that it doesn't make sense. But unfortunately, not a lot of people know this. A lot of people think export is only the good thing and import is a bad thing, or import is good thing and export is a bad thing. No, it benefits as a whole country just as much. But unfortunately, that's really not the case in a general public, not really willing to learn. So in America, there is a movement in schools to really promote education of economics. And I really hope that happens in Taiwan too, because economics perhaps would be the most practical field that you will ever study in your life that can be directly applied to the life, actually. Now, theory to reality, another aspect of it. Theory suggests that countries benefit from trade. So the countries benefit from the growth of trade in the second half of the 20th century, facilitated by the shipping container. So as you can see, all these countries, right, that are growing average annual change in merchandise exports, average change in GDP per capita. So the more you trade, the more, so if we were to draw a tendency line, it goes like this, which means that the more you trade, the more likely you'll be developed. Okay. World population living in extreme poverty. So number of people not in extreme poverty and number of people living in extreme poverty. Why did I even put this data? Sorry, I actually collected a lot of slides from different lessons, so this might have been a mistake. Never mind. Now, one thing though I would like to share is this interactive practice. I will put this on our chat as well. So if you want, you can actually practice yourself. This will be a great review for you to just give it a try. It's very interactive. I can even show you a little bit to review some of these things that we just covered. Give me just a second. So if I click this link, so share this tab. So if you click that link, you should be able to land here. And if you play, now you get to really decide the consumer surplus, producer surplus, and all this. So here, given it's only domestic trade, only US suppliers are able to sell avocados in the US. Select the consumer surplus, easy, it'd be that, ta-da, correct. Moving on. Only what be the producer surplus, select this, correct. Now total surplus, we know this already, so correct. Now, US is now able to import avocados from other countries at a lower price than the US market price. The world supply curve is labeled as SW, supply of the world, and domestic supply curve is SD, right over here. Then will be, and this price PW would be the world price. So now we have to choose only domestic consumer surplus. Now, without the trade, we know it used to be this. But with the new trade, now that price got cheaper, more people can buy this. So it's going to be this whole area, right? Correct. But on the other hand, in this case, domestic producer surplus, so domestic suppliers will suffer from this, right? A little bit. So it's going to, instead of from here, these two area, now it's going to be just this area. And then total surplus, however, though, even though domestic producers are making less surplus because consumers are making more, then it's going to be this whole thing as the total surplus. So on and so forth, you can actually use the gains from international trade. Okay, let's do this one as the last one. So what this means by gains from international trade is gain that you can have only through international, which is this triangle, right? So that's correct. And so on and so forth, okay? So this will be a great opportunity for you to review our concepts. And yeah, let me actually go back here. The interactive practice. So with this marks our conclusion of covering demand and supply, consumer and producer surplus, who exports and who imports, and what's better. And in conclusion, we can say that exports and imports are just as benefiting to each other. Now, practically speaking, then why is it better? Like why are they equally good? Because for consumers, by importing goods, consumers are benefiting. That means consumers are saving money. They are paying less for goods that they used to pay. So therefore, with the rest of the money, they can actually buy other things, other domestic products, or other things that will also help other businesses in Taiwan. So instead of buying, now that I'm buying American hot dogs, now I get to save some money. So I'm going to buy, I don't know, garlic, like a locally grown garlic from the grocery stores. I would have enough money to buy that. So that's how with the imports still country will be benefiting, because without that imports, consumers will have only enough money to buy a hot dog, but now that they can buy other things, they will, by spending more money to it, this will really pump up the circulation of money in the market. Oh man, I know I spoke a lot, and this I think is pretty easy class lesson that I've covered. But does anybody have any questions about producer surplus, consumer surplus, and for military or so? Let me actually take a look at this. For a military or political concern, I'm not quite sure what you mean by this. But if you could elaborate on this one, I would love to answer your question too. But any other questions about the lessons we covered? Hmm. Now, maybe what I can do with a little bit of a time that we have would be a quick, using maybe this graph over here, a quick concept of tariff. Now, have you guys heard of tariff? In Korean, I know that tariff is 관세, which is a tax that's charged to imported. Oh, perfect. It's same thing, 관세. Yeah, exactly. So tariff is the tax that imported goods. So companies that are, how do I say it? Tax charged on imported goods. So that what's going to happen though in the case of this is, while without tariff, right? Without tariff, price of world would stay as low as this. But with tariff, the price of the world maybe would go up a little bit over here. So after tariff will be still maybe cheaper than domestic price, but still not as big of a gap, right? Not as big of a gap. So because price of the world is gonna go up because of tariff, that's gonna free up some space for producer surplus. So a lot of times, 관세 tariff is used to protect the domestic producers. Okay. Now, is that good for the whole economy? Now, that really depends, right? As a whole economy, just on an economic standpoint, tariff might not be that good, because that's gonna decrease the amount of the gain from the international trade, which is this area D, right? As price goes up, if price is up to here, then this small triangle will be the gains from trade. However, sometimes tariff is used in a good way if the government wants to really, really pump up the domestic economy and domestic producers. So tariff is used in that way to protect domestic producers. So we're even going above and beyond right now to cover this. Is there any questions about the lessons that we covered today?
Manchu, thank you so much for your detailed and informative economic course. Some of the students may not understand that since it may be their first time to get in touch with such kind of knowledge. So maybe it takes time. Yeah. Maybe they are not familiar with those jargons, terminology.
Okay. Okay.
I'm so
Is
surprised
there
that there are. I'm so surprised that there is an interactive game for economy. That was so interesting.
Oh yeah. There are a lot of games like this on through this website. So
Wow.
I'll see if I can bring something up next time as well.
And some of the teachers and students are the first time to get online. They didn't listen to the courses last semester. Is it okay for you to introduce yourself a little bit? And maybe
Oh.
your school. We are so interested about you, how you can speak English so well. And maybe
Okay.
my student also asked that maybe you can sing one Mandarin song.
Oh my goodness.
Is that okay?
Let's see. All right, so to introduce myself, 我的中文很差，可是大家好，我叫金老师，我的韩国名字是金汉俊，金汉俊，yes，我去过台湾。In fact, I worked a little bit at Changchun Ivy Collegiate Academy in Tanzi district. So I've been to Taiwan and I lived there a little bit. Thank you very much. Brooke ongoing. I've been to Taiwan and I really loved everywhere there. It still is one of my favorite memories. I used to spend a lot of time hanging out with friends at Izhongjie. Is that right? Izhongjie? Yeah, and yeah. Um, while I was there, I tried my best to get used to try different things, but even by the time I left, I couldn't actually get myself used to chidubu, the stinky tofu. I couldn't get used to it. I tried, but still a big challenge. Other than that, what else do I? Oh, my so I was born in America, and I grew up there till I was like 5 or 6 years old. And then I went to Korea with my parents for the first time. So while I was in Korea, I went to normal Korean elementary school. But from middle and high school, I went to international school. So English speaking middle school and high school, where I learned to speak English again. And for college, I went to University of Wisconsin-Madison. There now. So I think I can try to speak that in Chinese. 我上 Wisconsin Madison 大学学校，and 我的专业是历史和经济学，然后我去过台 Is that 大学院? Is that how it is? The graduate school? I don't know. And I studied secondary
研
and
究所，
ooh, that is a little different. Yeah.
研究所。
研究所. Okay. In Korean it's 대학원, so like 大学院. But anyway, anyway, so there I studied secondary education and got myself a master's degree and became a teacher. And as soon as I got that teacher license, I did go to Taiwan, um, to teach for a year. And then I realized I wanted to gain some more experience in America. So I came back here. And now I've been teaching in this school for 3 years. I'm enjoying a lot, and I think I'll stay here for another 2 years, and then I really don't know. Maybe I'll go back to Taiwan, and hopefully, maybe I could visit you guys and meet you guys in person too.
So, can you just sing any song?
Oh,
Maybe English song is okay.
oh my goodness.
Please,
Sure. Oh,
my students are really love you.
okay. Well, okay. Give me just a second then. All right.
Hey everyone, do you have any requests or anything you want to know about Matthew King? You can think of that and ask him. He's really a good guy. And maybe next week we can also meet him.
Oh man. Um, I'm a little shy to sing without anything, so here brought a little guitar and see if that works. I
Wow.
only know yeah. I only know only one song that I could sing in Chinese in full. I'm embarrassed, but even if I mess up the lyrics, I hope you guys be generous. It's a very old song. All right. 你问我爱你有多深，我爱你有几分？我的心也真，我的爱也真，月亮代，Oh my gosh，代表我的心。Oh my god, I get so nervous. 你问我爱你有多深，我爱你有几分？你去想一想，你去看一看，月亮代表我的心，轻轻的一个吻，你已经打动我的心，深深的关心，叫我思念到如今。你问我爱你有多深，我爱你有几分？你去看一看，你去想一想，你去看一看，月亮代表我的心。Oh, this reminds me of another song. 只怕我自己会爱上你，不可让自己靠得太近，怕我没什么能够给你，爱你也只要很大的勇气，只怕我自己会爱上你。哒哒哒哒哒哒哒哒，像你这样自己苦了自己，爱你也是我情非得已， 爱你也是我情非得已，爱你也是我情非得已。There you go. Oh my goodness, what have I done? There you go.
Terrific, marvelous.